So welcome to the Hemophilia Council of California's webinar, GHPP, How to Apply or Renew Your Application. I'm Lynn Kintz, the Executive Director of the Hemophilia Council of California. Thank you for joining us today for this important topic. I want to briefly introduce our presenters for today. Terry Cowger-Hill is with us. Terry has been the legislative advocate for the Hemophilia Council for many years now, and she helps us at the state capitol as well as with the regulatory agencies to maintain a presence and to help protect the programs that are so important to our bleeding disorders community, but also to our broader rare disease community. Myself, Lynn Kintz, I'm the Executive Director of the Hemophilia Council. And then we also have with us Rigo Manzo, a patient and a recent addition to the Hemophilia Council's Advocacy Committee member, who's going to share a little bit about what it's like to be a patient on GHPP and why that's been so valuable for him. So first of all, what is GHPP? It is the Genetically Handicapped Persons Program. And GHPP is a state-funded program for patients with genetic disorders, including bleeding disorders, sickle cell, cystic fibrosis, and some others that are outlined on the state's website. And this program helps beneficiaries with healthcare costs, and it coordinates comprehensive care for those patients. So with that, Terry?
Yes. Hi, welcome everyone. I'm Terry Cowger-Hill, as Lynn mentioned, and I'm the longstanding advocate for the Hemophilia Council of California. And welcome to all of our friends in the sickle cell disease community and others who may have joined this webinar. So who is eligible for GHPP? The minimum age requirement is 21 years of age, and you must have an approved genetic condition that is defined in state statute. That includes hemophilia, von Willebrand disease, sickle cell disease, cystic fibrosis, and a few other rare metabolic and neurological disorders that are listed in that state statute. You must also be a resident of California. Many of our patients start out on the California Children's Services Program, or CCS. That program is a much larger program that starts at infancy and goes all the way up until you hit the age of 21. So many of you started on CCS, and now you may be eligible for GHPP. What does GHPP cover? It covers care in the special care centers located in California. Those include hemophilia treatment centers, sickle cell centers, cystic fibrosis centers, and they're generally clinics located in large academic medical centers or hospitals, such as the University of California hospitals, children's hospitals, but they can also be located independently and independently run centers. What does it include? It includes your hospital stay related to your genetic condition. It includes outpatient medical care services. GHPP also covers pharmaceutical services. So those would be any medications prescribed by your doctor, any home infusion therapy. So those with hemophilia often infuse their blood clotting factor in the home setting following the state standards, and that would be covered under the program as well. If you have sickle cell disease, most of the time your infusions are handled inside the special care centers located at those clinics, and that would be covered as well. GHPP also covers any needed surgeries. So if you have a surgery related to your condition, that is covered. For those with the rare metabolic disorders, the program also covers nutrition products and medical foods that are prescribed by your medical care team. The program also covers durable medical equipment, and that's just a fancy term for things like wheelchairs, knee braces, leg braces, crutches. Those would all be covered under durable medical equipment, or sometimes you hear the shortened term DME. Other services provided under GHPP include home health services. So sometimes you'll have a home health nurse come visit you in the home setting. Physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, those are all included under GHPP. The program also covers mental health services and ancillary medical supplies. So again, if you're infusing factor in the home setting, all of the ancillary medical supplies related to that home infusion would be covered. Note that each service has specific criteria for approval and must be medically necessary and proved by the program. Beneficiary responsibilities. You must meet the eligibility requirements, and you must also be subject to annual enrollment fees. Many years ago, when the state of California was facing a fiscal budget crisis, the GHPP program was going to be either reduced, the benefits were going to be reduced, or the eligibility for patients was going to be limited. And so part of a compromise that was put forth included negotiations with the Hemophilia Council of California, with the legislature, came up with a win-win solution to keep the program going for patients and instituted the annual enrollment fee. But note that that annual enrollment fee is based on your income. It's on a sliding fee scale. And if you have financial hardship, you can make arrangements with the Genetically Handicapped Persons Program to have your enrollment fees put on a payment plan where you pay a certain amount each month. Or in some rare cases, when you're facing financial hardship, you can even have those fees waived. But you need to work with the program in order to do any of those options. You must update your annual enrollment each year. You must update your application yearly. You should also update any new contact information. So say if your address changes, you have a new phone number, a new email, it's important to stay in touch with the department and with the program. You should also update your financial status if it changes. Many people lost their jobs during the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020. And so your annual enrollment fee is based on your previous year's income. So it's really critical that you update that financial status if it goes down. And even if it goes up, you need to be in communication with the program. Note that you can also be enrolled in another type of health insurance coverage for your primary care coverage. So you can have private coverage through your employer. You can have it through Covered California plans, which is California's ACA program. You can have Medi-Cal, and then GHPP becomes your secondary coverage.
So Rico, at this point, can you share a little bit with us about what it's like to be a patient on GHPP and what your experience has been?
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me. And as Terry mentioned, I'm actually one of those people that grew up with the CCS program. And when it came time for me to find my own health insurance plans, I got to know more about GHPP, and I enrolled early on as soon as I became 21. I have severe hemophilia, and needless to say, it's pretty expensive for treatments. So of course I needed the help. And early on, I was experiencing some challenges with my private insurance with work, and GHPP really did come through filling in those gaps for covering my medicine and my HTC visits. So I really benefited from GHPP's program, and has allowed me to become a little bit more independent and flexible when it comes to my career and job opportunities. And instead of looking for a job depending on what kind of health insurance they provide, I'm able to look for a job that is based on my own goals and my own interests, and whatever health insurance they provide, I have the option to opt in or continue on with GHPP, or I can have a hybrid of the two, having private insurance and GHPP, which I kind of have right now currently. But there were some times where I didn't have private insurance, and GHPP came through for that. Another thing too, I know that every year is kind of a challenge to, remind yourself to renew the applications. And for me personally, what I've done is that I'm lucky that my enrollment deadline is around my birthday. So I kind of already have a general idea of when to start my application process. But I also try to remind myself on my calendar, like, maybe at least 2 months or a month before in advance, so that I can start the application process. That way there's no interruption of the coverage. So I try to keep myself aware of that. And also, because my birthday is in September, I make sure that my taxes are done like early on in the year so that I can get the information back and so I can send the necessary documents to the GHPP office so they can get my information updated with all my W-2s and all the taxes and all my income that I made prior year so that I can be eligible for the renewal. And of course, I make copies and I double check everything, make sure everything's up to date, and then initial everything. It's easy to miss. It's easy. I know it's easy to miss because the application at times could be a little challenging to read, but there are portions of the application that you got to make sure that you initial and sign, and making sure that if you're yourself signing it, make sure that you're the one signing and you're not signing the part where it says, guardian, parent, or guardian, because I know it's hard to come to terms that at some point we become adults. With people that have, genetic disorders, we do become able bodies out there in the workforce. So we got to remember that we're doing it for ourselves and trying to live happy and independent lives. So I've really benefited a lot from GHPP, and it's given me so much, and I don't take it for granted. So this is a really great program to have, especially living here in California.
Thank you so much, Rigo. Those are great tips for everyone in terms of how to go through the application process and why it's been so helpful. Quickly about the application process right now. So the GHPP application and referral forms are available on the GHPP How to Apply page. And I will note that they are there in both English and Spanish. You can download the forms. We recommend that you try to submit the application 2 months prior to when you're looking for the GHPP insurance to kick in, or when your renewal date is coming up. We know this is not always possible, but do get that in as quickly as you can. Typically, I would say that the state does turn them around in a normal time frame faster than that, but we have noticed that in this era of COVID and workflow disruptions with state employees having to telework and be working from home, et cetera, that there have been some delays. And so the sooner that you can get them in, the more complete your application is up front, the more likely it will be to be processed in time before any deadlines. Be sure to include both Part A and Part B. As Rigo mentioned, there are several places to initial, so don't forget to initial and sign all parts. You are going to need to include your current tax return, a copy of your California ID, and proof of residency. That proof of residency, that's in terms of showing something like a bill, like a cable bill or something at your home that shows that you do live at that address. And new applications, and I think there was just a question that popped into the chat about this. New applications must include a medical report which confirms that you have an eligible medical condition. And as we've referenced, there is a list of those conditions on the GHPP website. Your documents can be submitted via email, fax, or mail, but we do recommend that the best way is email to submit those, in that it is the easiest to track and to be able to reference back when you submitted it and that you did submit it. But in any case, however you submit it, be sure that you always keep a copy of your paperwork and document when and how you submitted the paperwork. In regards to accessing services, and I know there have been some questions on that as well, people on GHPP are strongly encouraged to use their special care centers. So for example, people with bleeding disorders, that would be your Hemophilia Treatment Center. And we've listed here a link to find your nearest Hemophilia Treatment Center. As well, those folks that have sickle cell, and because we know we have a large number of you participating today, there is a network of care centers that you can reference as well. And then GHPP's website does also have a list of GHPP providers. You are not required to use those providers, but since they are familiar with GHPP, you may find it's easier to access services with them. One of the challenges that we do find is that there are only about 1,300 patients in the whole of the state who are currently on GHPP. And so many providers are just not familiar with the program. So sometimes you do have to do some advocacy in order to help them to understand the program and how they would go about submitting the billing in order to provide services for you.
So how do you renew? GHPP beneficiaries must renew annually, as we've mentioned previously. The process is similar to the original application. Typically, the department will mail out your renewal applications 2 months prior to the expiration of your eligibility. And the Hemophilia Council of California recommends that you mark your calendar approximately 2 months prior to your end date. And that way it reminds you to start pulling together your previous year's tax return information. You need to show proof of California residency. So that's generally just a utility bill with your name on it and your address, and all of the other application materials that you'll need. The application can be downloaded from the following website that is shown on the slide. And for those of you that might not be able to see that, we will be sending out the slide deck approximately a week or so after the call. And as we've mentioned, this call is being recorded, so we'll have that for you to view as well and to listen to on your own time. So all of the same documentation is required except the original genetic condition for which you applied.
I want to briefly just say thank you to everybody for joining us today, and also thank Terry and Rigo for helping to present this information, to thank Takeda and Sanofi Genzyme for sponsoring our webinar series, and thank you for joining us. Thank you again. Clearly there was a lot of interest in this topic, so we appreciate you all joining us.